This is Luke at Whittle Sticks, and we are going to install some new pegs in this violin. So this is a full-size violin. It has no label. It's a very interesting violin. Let's see if you can see this. The arching is very pronounced, very distinct arch on this. It is an older violin that has been refinished. And so that's why it looks a lot glossier and a lot shinier, but definitely a unique build. And what we've got going on is the pegs here. The pegs are rather old, and that's not really so much. They've gotten near the end of their life, but they just aren't functioning very well. And the client that brought this in, my customer, is tired of dealing with it. Like we've worked these over with pegs and stuff, but our crazy dry climate here in Utah, the pegs are shrinking and expanding so much, they're just tired of dealing with it. So we're going to put Wittner mechanical pegs in it, and which are a great peg. So we're actually going to take and hook this up into the small instrument vise here on my total vise system. Move a few things out of the way, get this set for length. Got to move that up just a little bit. We're going to shift this whole thing up just a little. Now, I know some of you violin guys are like, oh man, that's too much fuss and too much other stuff, but this is the cool part. When you set this in, we now lock down the headstock, the hold down here, and this is padded, so it's not going to hurt the front of the scroll or the back of the scroll. Now we take this piece, and we're going to undo that articulation right there. I'm going to lock this into place. That looks good there. Tighten that up. Push down just a little bit, and now this thing is rock solid in there. I don't have to worry about this thing moving, shifting around, or anything while I'm doing this work. So first off, we're going to take and unwind these strings, and these are actually pretty new strings. These are only like a week or two old. I just put them on and did a little work on the pegs, and the pegs are still having issues. And so my customer was just like, I just want to change them out. I don't want to deal with it. I was like, okay, fair enough. So we're actually just going to take and undo these. These should just wind out just like that. And I'm going to take and set a couple layers of paper towel right here just to protect that top from that tail piece moving around at all. So now we can actually just go ahead, take these out. They are done. These no longer will serve any purpose because the fitting, when I fit in the new pegs, they're actually going just slightly larger. The Wittner pegs come in two sizes. One is a 7.4, and the other one is an 8.6. Now this one here is the 8.6, and these holes are like a 7.8. So I can't use the smaller one, so we do have to go up to this size. Now what the Wittner pegs are, as you can see here, this is a full set. Now these Wittner pegs are a mechanical peg. These have an 8-to-1 gear ratio. Now it doesn't matter which one you put where, they're all the same peg. They all have the same, look. You can get these in a rosewood color now, where these are just kind of a black. Personally, I like the black because black goes with everything. And, of course, for this violin that already has the ebony tailpiece and chin rest, you'd, of course, want the black. So what I always do first, I now have all four sitting here. I'm actually going to get one of my little trays, my little cups, and I'm going to set it right here actually below the neck so I can just set the pegs right there. And I always come in first and just kind of do a little bit of a test fit. So I obviously need to go quite a ways with this. Just because these need to go in quite a bit more. Now, I do have a side view setup of this. So once I start the reaming, you will see this. I'm actually going to move this just a little bit, see if I can get you in a little better angle to see this. And zoom you in just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now you'll start seeing a side view as I install these pegs. So first off, we're going to set this in right here. Oops. Yeah. So this side, I'm just taking one peg and just kind of checking and seeing how they all fit. Now this one definitely, the bottom hole thus far is the largest. The top and the bottom are the largest. So these middle two I might have got away with doing the smaller size, but we're just going to make them all uniform. So this is now where we take our peg reamer. So our peg reamer is just a tapered, fluted. This is a spiral taper, and very cool little tool. I've had this one for a lot of years. They do get a little expensive, but we're actually just going to take this. I'm going to set it right in that peg hole and start to turn it. Now, I will say this does take a lot of practice, and this isn't something that I normally suggest. Yeah, go buy that tool and do this yourself. This is something that you can, screw this up rather quickly with. Now, as you can see, I've kind of cheated. I don't know if it'll show up on the video. There are little marks on my reamer here where I have made for depth stops for doing these pegs. Now, I always walk up to these lines because I always want to just kind of make sure that everything, like all these pegs are consistent. So now I'm just going to take a peg, go, okay, yeah, I got to go a little bit more. It is always worth double checking these, because sometimes you get a little too overconfident and you don't want to make the mistake of putting in something, and having it too loose. So I do have to go just a little bit more. About another turn, and then I'm actually going to go backwards one turn or two. And that actually just kind of compresses that wood a little bit around in that peg hole. Now you don't want to do that a bunch, because you could actually just force and crack this peg box wall right here, by driving that in there. But that's perfect, just like that. Now I'll have a little nub hanging out on this side, which is kind of hard to see right there, but I'll actually go ahead and trim this off, and we will set that peg the way it should be. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this, the D string. This is for the G. Here's the D. I'm going to go ahead and get that shaped in. I'm looking at the angle of this reamer as I go, make sure that I'm not starting to wander, because you can actually tilt the pegs as you go. So you kind of want to make sure you're keeping things lined up, and I will come and look at a different angle, make sure that I'm not like wandering a different way. These are pretty good. This peg box is definitely a nice material. It's a nice maple. Blow out some of the dust. Sorry if I get it on the camera. You'll have to forgive me. And do the first test fit here. Oh, I gotta go a little bit more. That's a little too snug. So let's go another like that. Very light cut. You can do a lot with just one turn of a reamer. And that is perfect. Nice and snug. Because these are just tension fit, just like a standard wood peg. So you don't want to be just cranking down on this stuff. Now I'm actually going to set this in this way. And so my hand will be in the way a little bit here, but as we go in, you will get a better idea. Now I'm actually going to change the angle of this peg just ever so slightly, and because it is a little bit off. Now make sure that looks good in line with the other pegs. That looks better. And now we're just going to simply just try to turn this as smoothly as possible. I'm going to clear a chip so I can see my mark better. All right, and we're sneaking up onto this peg right there. All right, and there is that peg. That looks good. Now one more. I'm going to turn this knob, make sure I am not going to hit it with my reamer. And this is another one. I'm going to change the angle just ever so slightly, straighten it out just a little bit on the A peg. There we go. that looks better. Check, make sure I'm not doing a wonky angle. That's lined up with the other pegs. And we are good to go. Okay. All right, almost there. I'm going to do one little check here. Just make sure that everything is looking the way I think it should. Everything's looking great. Just a little bit more. And last turn. Just a little backwards. And like that. Okay. Now, this should be pretty dang close. Perfect. Okay. That gets me 4 pegs, and these are tight enough that I can turn just the knob, and the internal pieces just move. It's like I said, an 8-to-1 ratio, so as you move this knob, this outside knob 8 times, the internal piece actually only rotates once. So that's the way this runs. All right, now we're going to take and actually tap these back out. And, well, first I'm going to mark the length. So for this, I actually just use a white pencil. That's supposed to sit right there. Let me see. I must have set it in my guitar drawer. There it is. So I just make a little mark on each peg, just so I know the length that I need to trim these off. Now you can go about this several different ways. Some people will cut them flush, like a new peg will be. Other people leave just a little nub hanging out so that it look like an older peg, because most violins, if you look, have some sort of a nub hanging out. Personally, it's kind of either way for me. I haven't really decided one way or the other. Lots of times it depends on how narrow the peg box wall is. And so there is my, if you can see it, there's my little mark on there to cut it off. And I actually just use, this is a fretting hammer that has a plastic end, so I can just tap very lightly on the end of that peg. It's actually how you're supposed to remove these. You're not supposed to pull on the knob to remove them, because if you do, you can actually tear out the gearing. That is one way they are not supposed to be forced. So I hold the peg box with one side, just tap it. You can see I'm just holding the hammer head itself, so I'm not hitting with any real force. Just a light tap and these pop right out, and I have a nice little mark there. All right, we're gonna go over to the bandsaw and then to the sander, and we're going to cut these off and sand them down a little bit, and then I'll polish them by hand. Now you can take, if you want, you can just take these, you know, and use a handsaw, whatever. I just like using the other stuff because it's just faster. So let's go over there and I'll show you that. Okay, I tried to film it, but nothing, I kept getting in the way. So I got these, I just hurried and got these cut and got these sanded off to the mark. And now I actually just take these on just a fine piece of sandpaper and just kind of do a circular motion to kind of give them a little bit of a dome and to smooth up that cut and sanded edge. So this is a fine grit, about an 800 grit. Don't have to do this for too long, but for just a minute, I end up with this nice little domed, domed end of the peg, and I'll actually take it to a strop and polish it up just a little bit, and that will be good enough for this. These pegs really don't take like ever a real high shine. Like you can if you go through enough grits, but it's one of those where the texture of the actual peg itself is not that high gloss. So if you do, they look a little out of place. So they look a little better if you, kind of go with about an 800 grit. It looks about right for the sheen of the rest of the peg. Something like that. And then as you may wonder, how do I keep track which one is which peg when I really don't mark them? They're different lengths. And so the longest peg is the G, the shortest is the A, and the other two. So you simply can just look at them and figure out which one is which. It doesn't take much. Just like when you take a set of pegs out, some people will take and actually, mark them, put them in a holder, whatever, mark them out. Most of the time, you can simply just look at them and know where they go. Okay, and there is our pegs. Now I'm actually going to break out the strop. Now this is the same strop I use for like sharpening blades and stuff like that. So this is just a piece of leather with some buffing rouge on it. And same idea, I'm just going to take this and just rub the end of the peg on it. And there again, this is just to give it just a nice, if we can get it in the right light, just a nice little sheen on there, nothing crazy. So it's actually a little higher gloss than the finished, than the knob of the peg, but that's okay. It will look nice. This gives them a much nicer finished edge, and they look more, we'll say, professional, which is what we're going for. We're looking for professionally installed pegs. And I am a huge fan of these pegs just because you do not have to worry about the humidity and the temperature, and they just tend to stay way better in tune. And we're actually going to take and pull this fine tuner off on this tailpiece. There we go. There's all four. So let's do that real quick. We're actually come back down here. And we're going to take the top out of this fine tuner. Excuse me. Throat's getting dry. I have a very nice little set of forceps to get a hold of that little tiny nut. Just get it loose. Then I can take my fingers and get rid of that fine tuner, because you will no longer need it. The way these work with that gear ratio in there, they do all the fine tuning for you. So now we can actually put that string right in that hole. And now we are ready to push these in and get them installed. So now, as I'm going to say, I'm going to show that that is the longest one. And I like to line these up a little bit. It looks like I will have just a little bit of a nub sticking out, which is fine. I kind of personally like the look of it a little better when there's a little bit of a nub sticking out, because it kind of looks like an old peg. But they actually do have a little bit of a logo on them, and I do like to line them up just so they look uniform. And last peg right there, and we are done. So that is really the install. Like if you can get these fit right and done these enough, that's as much as it takes to install these pegs. There's no glue, anything like that, and now these are geared pegs. So super nice to work with. Okay, now we're going to simply string this back up. And this is, I will say, the one drawback of this is that you will be taking longer to put on your strings. But I do cheat just a little bit, and we're going to use a power winder. Now I have this mechanical drip plug, and it actually has a rubber. This is actually meant for guitars, but it actually fits these Wittner pegs perfectly. Now I do turn this down so they're not doing a high rate, and that's the direction I need. And I can just simply set it on there and wind this up. Okay, now it's probably loud. And if it's too loud when I'm doing the editing, I will cut it out, and you won't have to listen to it wind up. Or I'll speed it up so I can music over it, something like that. So I'm going to put this other high string on, or put the high string on, I guess, not the other. Put on the E string. and then we will set the bridge up. Oops, I got to switch directions. All right, so now we're going to take these two, with those two strings on there, and I can set the bridge back on, get it close to in place, stick this back up on the nut. Okay. Now let's get on these last two strings and we'll be done. U strings are always hard because they always have a little kink in the end that you went through the previous peg. Last string. All right, now we're going to take and straighten that bridge back out. It has wandered away a little bit. Just like that. Take these out from underneath there. That looks great. Okay, time to tune this thing up, and we are done. So really, as far as the installation goes, that's completely it. We are done. Now we're simply just going to take and stick a tuner on there, if I can find one. I only have about 40 of the things in here. There we go. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just unhook it from here, because we can take it out from this. Don't need it in there anymore. And we're going to tune it up. And so now I can simply just turn these knobs very effortlessly. Straighten the bridge just a little bit more. And there we go. Those pegs are now installed. We don't have to worry about fine tuners anymore, which is great. So as you can see here, no fine tuners there. Got the nice pegs up there. Everything is uniform, looks nice. And we are done. This is now a happy customer that will not have to worry about tuning near as much as they used to. And it is very effortlessly, when you get up here, you can just simply turn the knob. You don't have to worry about pushing in on the peg. So, hope you all enjoyed that. And definitely do, if you're a string player, do look at those pegs. If you play the violin or the cello, viola, any of those, these are well worth the money. Highly recommend them. I don't have them on my instrument because I play bass and there's gear. Anyway, I hope you guys all liked that video on the Wittner pegs. If you do want to see more stuff like this, do subscribe to the channel. Let me know what, also, like if there's something you want to see, make a comment it down below and I'll see what I can do. I'm going to be doing some more repair work. I've got a big Regal guitar project coming up. Going to do some interview stuff with some other luthiers. And if you guys want to see like tool reviews, stuff like that, see the, when any in this tool chest I got behind me, there's all kinds of tools in there if you guys want to see certain tools. Anyway, like, subscribe. We'll see you guys on the next one, and be kind to each other.